Okay. So this totally comes from my experience as an emergency room physician, talking to thousands of patients who are substance abusers and trying to find out, when I'm sewing their laceration or setting their broken bone, where did they go wrong? What was the first thing that happened? Oh, I need to mention this bill is cross-filed with Senator Muse in the Senate, by the way. And emergency departments visits greatly underestimate addiction as a cause. You may see numbers like 2,000 or 3,000 visits for addiction. It's probably more in the hundreds of thousands. And the reason that is because the way charts are coded, that is the numbers that are put at the end. So if Delegate Wilson came in with a laceration forearm from a sporting accident, it would look the same as somebody who broke into a window to steal something. What all these people tell me is their first episode was their first arrest and record is what got them on the wrong path. And let me say, too, I'm not for substance abuse. I put in a bill, and this may look familiar to you. February 2001 was the Lieutenant Governor's Task Force. I was the lead sponsor of the bill. We still have Lieutenant Governor's task forces going around. It's been a long time. It's maybe a new issue for many of us, but it's not a new issue to me. And 10 years ago, I don't think I would have put this bill in, to decriminalize possession of small amounts of drugs. But we've had 50 years of high-level incarceration, prosecution, and arrests. And we're hardly in a position to have a confetti parade down Main Street and open the champagne saying, we've done our job, we've licked the war on drugs. If anything, every single aspect of the war on drugs is worse now, however well-intentioned, than when we started 50 years ago. And I see it every day when I work, except for here. But clinically, I work at a level 2 trauma center in the middle of Baltimore City. There's more drugs, more violence, more money, more trauma, more disease spread, more innocent crime victims, more police hurt and injured on the job protecting us, and so on. So there's no one cause for all these problems. People have been abusing drugs since we've had consciousness, going back thousands of years. Most recently, the war on drugs really started in 1970. And there's no one silver bullet solution. We always want to look for that. But it's as complex and manifold as there are human beings. In fact, in the study that we did back in 1999 and 2001, we identified that one of the key roles was the addiction treatment counselor. Some people may do well going away for long-term treatment. That's really important for some. Others, faith-based may work better. Some, methadone, Vivitrol, buprenorphine. Some Narcotics Anonymous. Different things work for different people depending on their life experience, and we need to look at it and their circumstances. And we need to look at it as a chronic disease. There are relapses. People with asthma have relapses. People with diabetes have relapses. So, this is one strategy, not the only. There are a number of bills that are out there this year. Having the ones I've reviewed, I tend to support them all because they all take a somewhat different approach and different ones work. But this is a harm reduction strategy. Now, last year, this committee, along with HGO where I was, passed the Justice Reinvestment Act. And what was the real purpose of that bill? It was to say, and you can see on page 4 of the fiscal note how many thousands of arrests there are, but the purpose of that bill was to say people in jail, a lot of them are nonviolent drug offenders, let's get them out into treatment. What this bill is about is diverting them on the front end, to get them into treatment before they get. And I just want to share a specific story of a guy I took care of a few months back. Chief complaint said leg pain. When I went in to see him, he actually had an abscess on his left inner thigh the size of a grapefruit from shooting up with dirty needles. To take care of that involved first taking an x-ray to make sure there's no broken needles or other foreign bodies in there, because later I'm going to have to explore that. We need to give him antibiotics and pain medicine. We don't always do that for abscess, but this was a big one. To do that, I had to put in a central line because his veins were all shut up. Otherwise, he had been using them. So that involved taking a big needle and putting it in his neck or chest or groin. And there's a whole procedure around that. Then, finally, numbing the area, which is a big picture of the worst pimple you ever had, mega-sized, and then numbing all of that, then incising it, letting all the pus out, all this other stuff, and at the end, wrapping it 2 or 3 hours, several thousands of dollars. It'll show up as an abscess in the final diagnosis. Now I say, I'd like to get you into treatment. What do? I give them a sheet of phone numbers. And that's it. Where did you go wrong? Well, the first arrest happened. Way back when he was about 40 years old when I saw him when he was 16, 17. He got that arrest, and a whole bunch of doors closed. The doors to employment, the doors to education, the doors to housing, the doors to credit. And what opened? Life of crime, drug dealing. In fact, most users, it's like the pyramid scheme of drug addiction. Their goal, if I'm an addict, is to get my 4 friends here on this side of me addicted. They buy from me. That's how I make the marginal difference. And the economics of it are staggering. Let me give you some numbers. They're about 20,000 hardcore addicts in Baltimore City. That means daily heroin users. Heroin, fentanyl, it's all bad. I've seen too many overdoses and overdose deaths. Average cost, I always ask it, how much does it cost? $50 a day. Do the math. 20,000 times 50 times 365 is almost $400 million a year just spent to buy drugs. It doesn't count police, court, jail, all the social costs, spiritual costs, and so on. Statewide, we probably spend $1.25 billion just to buy the drugs. And we're a little state. Where does this money end up? It ends up in the hands of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, actually. They actually, concentrate on drug cartels in Latin America. They actually focus on taking over those poppy fields. So the question is really, can people be motivated without fear of incarceration? Do we always have to put people in jail to scare them into doing the right thing? And, we've had these draconian laws in some states, incredibly draconian. New York, prison people for decades for possession of small amount of drugs, and it's not worked. So I know it's hard. I know it's hard to think that we're going to decriminalize possessions of small amounts of drugs. I understand the police have concerns about it. I work with police every day, every shift. I know the challenges. At 2 in the morning, I know what they're going through. We collaborate. But even many law enforcement officers, as you'll hear from Neil Franklin, who you know, understand now that this isn't working anymore. And I provided some articles with you. We're seeing a shift. Certainly we ought to try this. When you get these people out of that line that puts them into the life of crime, you give them a shot to do something better with their lives, a lot of them will take it. Not everybody. Nobody's under the illusion it's going to solve all the problems overnight or everybody's going to become a tax-paying, sober citizen. But if we could decompress the 20,000 hardcore users in Baltimore City to 15,000, not even a very hard task, we'd overnight decompress the criminal justice and healthcare system. So what the bill does, it says first arrest, you get a $100 fine, and you're pushed into treatment, very much like the Justice Reinvestment Act. Second arrest, you get a $250 fine, you get into drug treatment referral. Third arrest, you're in the criminal justice system as it stands now. So one of the good questions I think Delegate Ray asked last time, does this go on indefinitely? You were right. That was a good question. I hope I have a better answer now, Delegate Ray. It says, yeah, the third strike, you're in the criminal justice system. Does this bill change possession and distribution and all of that? Not a bit. This is just possession of de minimis amounts. And one other point that was brought up last year, you did a good job of questioning me. I hope you're nicer this time, but was what is de minimis? So I have scaled back de minimis to be truly de minimis. These are really small amounts. Anything more than that, this bill does not apply. So this is a time now to look at new solutions. And I know we're locked into this thing, the idea of voting for decriminalize something that we've all been conditioned for decades, including me, for all this time, and now to say, hey, can we try that? Now, you're going to hear from other people the issues, the number of arrests, the way this works out in people of color and in the urban areas and so on. This is really what's devastating. And I think if we just turn this to a slightly different direction now, as you have done, as we have done with the Justice Reinvestment Act, but why wait until they go through arrest, prosecution, incarceration, parole, probation, all those costs? Let's divert them on the front end. At least some of them will get the message. And for that reason, I'm going to ask for a favorable report. I'm happy to work with you on this. The judiciary had some more technical opposition to the bill about keeping track of things. It's not an area I'm really familiar with yet, but I think those we can work out with amendments. The police, I understand their point of view. I simply disagree. I respect it. But the other piece, opposition, I think we can deal with that. I think the message here is we're going to still recognize that substance abuse is a bad thing. We don't want you to do substances. We're going to try and put you into treatment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.